I've been tongued right up the jacksie.
You'll share man's greatest thrill.
They tried and failed.
They tried and died.
You're dealing with the creme de la creme.
Hello and welcome to episode 13 of the Scratchcast, the alternative pop culture podcast. I'm Sneds, and as always, I'm joined by the mightily mustachioed Mr. Grant Patterson.
Hello.
And we're just two northeast loons who love to talk about music. I suppose you could clarify that a loon, if you're not Scottish, a loon is a lad or a boy, not like a madman. Although with that moustache, you look a bit like Chopper Harris or some shit. So,
Well, I think I look more like Wario.
yeah, that's a good shout actually.
Yeah.
Or the Scousers from Harry Hill or something.
Yeah, man. Like if I grew my hair out, yeah, I definitely would.
Yeah. Cool. Right. So how have you been getting on since the last podcast?
Yeah, man, I've been good.
Good. Do you want to talk a wee bit about the November playlist?
Yeah, so every day we've been, I suppose, posting songs that we believe have a kind of positive mental health message, as well as some information on mental health charities and services that are available to people in their time of need, as well as a wee bit of advice. Most of the websites that we've kind of posted include quite a lot of kind of well-being advice anyway. Yeah, I think it's I think it's been quite good, quite enjoyable.
Yeah, man. I think it'll be a good playlist. I mean, what today's just the penultimate day, so we've got one more day. So by the time this podcast goes out, it's all done and dusted. But there's nothing to stop you from going back and checking out all those songs and giving the playlist a spin, because I think it'll be quite good. It's worth talking about my legal dispute with Feeder.
Oh yeah.
I say legal dispute. So I basically posted Feeder's just a day for one of the days, and we've obviously been, because you were doing Movember, there's obviously been a bit at the bottom that says Grant is raising money for Movember, and here's a link kind of thing. So I just kind of gaily posted that and tagged Feeder and all the stuff on social media, and I got a message back from them basically saying you need to change your post because
This is misleading.
it's yeah, you've got to change your post because it's misleading. Feeder don't know anything about this, and I was like, well, why does that matter? Like, I'm just tagging Feeder in the post, like, and then I explained to him what we were doing, and he was like, oh yeah, okay, that's fine. And then it was kind of after that exchange, I was kind of thinking, you're just being like, why, like, they're being like divas or something. It was kind of a weird.
Sorry to interrupt. Did they not say that Grant has been raising awareness or something?
Yeah, so they said, yeah, Grant has been, involved with this charity and stuff before, and then I was like, okay, fine. And then until I went away and came back, I was like, it states in the post that Grant is raising money for Movember, and the guitarist and vocalist for Feeder is called Grant. And I was like, yeah, okay,
That's it.
that kind of makes sense. So I just thought whoever was working for Feeder's social media account was just being awkward. But yeah,
It's quite an awkward exchange though. Like
it was an awkward exchange. And I was like, oh shit, what have I done wrong? I've pissed Feeder off. Like,
when Feeder get a bee in their bonnet about something, you better watch out, son.
exactly. I've got Feeder on my back, but it's all good. We're all friends now. I'm sure if Grant is listening, Grant Nicholas, apologies.
Yeah, we're sorry, man.
Sorry, man. I'm sure he is listening, because why wouldn't he be?
Yeah, of course.
So anyway, if you want, you go and listen to the playlist. It's quite good.
It is good, man. It's an eclectic playlist.
What's that?
I'm saying it's quite an eclectic playlist.
Very eclectic playlist. Yeah, it's got punk rock on it. It's got like ethereal dance tunes on it.
Yeah.
It's got rap on it. It's got all sorts.
Yeah, aye. It's quite varied. To be honest, I'm quite impressed with it. Like I said, I think it will be quite a good playlist to go back and listen to.
Cool. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. Right, enough of all that pish. Let's just move on.
Rock and roll.
What are we talking about this month? On our singles swap, we're discussing singles from former extreme metaler Ihsahn and folky blues rocker Tastik. In Submission Corner, we're discussing releases from Edinburgh singer-songwriter Jack Hinks and London's indie folk duo Radiant Heart. And as if that wasn't already enough, we've got a bunch of album reviews from Nova Scotia's alt country singer-songwriter Norma Macdonald, California's one and only alt rock weirdos Eels, England's gloomy folktronica merchants Tunng, and Brooklyn, New York's throwback punk rockers I Am The Avalanche. So as always, that's quite a lot of stuff to get through. So let's just go straight into the single swap. As always, on each episode, we give each other a single to listen to for discussion on the next podcast. So on the last episode, I gave Grant Manhattan Skyline by Ihsahn, and Grant gave me Ain't No Man With Money by bluesy folk artist Tastik. We'll just start with Manhattan Skyline then.
Absolutely, man. So Manhattan Skyline by Ihsahn? Is it?
Yeah.
So that was released on the 28th of August, earlier on this year, under Candlelight Records, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce this. I can't pronounce it. Nemosine Productions, however, also featured on the artist's latest EP, Pharos, which was released on the 11th of September, earlier on this year. It's approximately 4 minutes and 51 seconds long, so just under 5 minutes, and is a cover of an old a-ha song, which itself was originally released in 1987 and featured on a-ha's third studio album, Scoundrel Days. Not being particularly au fait with either band, I chose to listen to both versions of the song, and I have to say, Ihsahn's version is pretty close to the original for my money. The track opens with this kind of floaty, sparkly sounding piano, which is accompanied by some pretty high-pitched and warbly vocals, which reminded me of something that I've listened to fairly recently, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Especially that kind of vocal refrain of "Now I must wave goodbye, wave goodbye, wave goodbye." And this particular bit kind of builds to a break and a kind of tonal change in the song around the 50-second mark, where we see this introduction of some pan-mute guitar, manic spikes of synth, which are pretty out there, and the vocals kind of ramp up a gear and the song takes on more of a kind of rocky feel. The rest of the song kind of follows much and such in the same sort of pattern. There's some really good vocal harmonies thrown in there as well, courtesy of an artist by the name of Einar Solberg, who's previously worked with Norwegian progressive metal band Leprous. I suppose it's also worth mentioning at this point, you've mentioned it already, but Ihsahn's otherwise known as Vegat Sven Vetan, is in and of himself a multi-instrumentalist and vocalist that is perhaps best known for his previous work with Norwegian black metal band Emperor. He's also one of the founding members of Thou Shalt Suffer and Peccatum. However, I think since about 2006 he's largely been concentrating on solo stuff. I've never heard any of those bands, but I think I know enough about black metal to say that this is probably a major departure from this type of stuff that he usually does. However, I did have a brief listen to Pharos and the EP that I mentioned, and it is pretty similar. It's pretty laid back from what I listened to. I quite enjoyed it, to be honest. I wasn't really too sure what to make it at first. Like I said, that kind of high-pitched, warbly vocals were a bit grating at first, but they did kind of grow on me after time. And like I said, it's pretty faithful to the original recording, which I think is pretty cool. And it allowed me to see the other side of a-ha that I wasn't aware of, because to be honest, when I think of a-ha, all I can think of is Take On Me. to be
Yeah,
honest. I
absolutely.
probably couldn't name another Aha song. So in terms of rating, I'd probably give it maybe a 6 or 7 out of 10.
Okay. I've described this as a bombastic operatic rock banger.
That's quite a good, yeah, because it is quite operatic. Like I
It's,
said,
I think
it's that
it's,
kind
I
of
think,
vocal theme that I mentioned.
yeah, I think if you if you're familiar with bands like Dream Theater or like Queensryche, well, these are sort of operatic rock bands, then you probably quite like this. Um, I've been listening to this on repeat for like since it came out. It came out in August, so right at the tail end of August. So I've just been absolutely rinsing this over and over again. I think it's I think it's brilliant. And I had absolutely no idea until I started doing the notes for this that it was an Aha cover. I
All
just
right,
thought it
okay.
was an original song. So um I don't know if I was a little disappointed there was a cover. I was kind of like in that it wasn't an original song, but um, like you say, it is a very very faithful cover. Um, and I would say I prefer this version
Right.
just because it's got a little bit more impact to it, probably because of like modern production techniques and the kind of it is more of like an operatic rock style version than it is like a sort of 80s pop style
Mm.
song, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, I think Einar Solberg's vocals are really quite special. Um, I'm not familiar that much with Leprous, but if you actually go back and listen to their album Pitfalls from last year, then something like Below on that is very similar to this. Um, Same kind of idea, but compared to likes of Ihsahn's back catalogue on with Emperor, like you said, it's much more akin to Einar Solberg's back catalogue than it is Ihsahn's.
Okay.
Especially if you go and listen to Emperor, and like I think the most popular song on Spotify is I Am The Black Wizards, which is just full of like harpy shrieks and like windswept kind of soundscapes and what the kind of thing you would expect from black metal, basically.
Yeah.
Quite kind of grainy kind of production. And this is like, the production on this is of a really high standard.
Yeah.
Um, so like I can't get enough of this song. Like I can't like I've got basically no criticism of it. It's just right up my street, and I don't really know why, but I think this is a 10 out of 10 song for me. I just
Right.
cannot get enough. Um, I never get bored of it. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I don't have that much more to say about it. It's got like really awesome guitars. There's the video is basically them singing. Well, the guy singing on top of a mountain, the guitarist
That seems quite fitting.
soloing on top of a mountain with a kind of city skyline in the background. So it's all very epic. So I think this is very very cool, which is why I gave you it in the first place to see
Yeah.
what you would think of
Cool, man.
it. So certainly seems to be a bit more up my street than yours.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, I did enjoy it. I don't know if I would go as far as to say that I would give it 10 out of 10, though.
No, no. Um, I just don't have anything bad to say about it. So it's like, well, it has to be a 10 out of 10. So it is what it is. Anyway, so that was the bombastic operatic rock banger Manhattan Skyline by Ihsahn featuring Einar Solberg.
You sit and watch umbrellas fly Now I must wave goodbye. You know I don't wanna cry again.
Okay, so the next one, the one you gave to me was Ain't No Man with Money by Van Tastik. So Van Tastik, also known as Chris Fallon, is a sort of bluesy folk artist currently living in the Netherlands, I think.
Yeah.
And at one time he lived and performed in Edinburgh. I think he's American born, grew up in France, and has kind of been like living a bit of a nomadic life, traveling around Europe. Um, and he seems to be a bit of a character. I think you mentioned on the last episode that he described himself as a cunt fuck,
Yeah.
and a modern day gypsy conceived by a serpent and born from a goat. Um, so he seems like an interesting fellow. To get a real kind of feel for his character, you can check out the video Meet Vantastic, which is on his own YouTube channel. And those are where those quotes come from. So Ain't No Man with Money is the first single from his debut album, Church of Vantastic, which I couldn't find a release date for. So I don't know if you found anything.
I don't know, to be honest. I'm not
No,
100% sure when that's.
So it might be out like, I don't know, the first quarter of next year or something. I'm not sure. But it's basically a sort of stomping blues rock song, and it reminds me quite a lot of the likes of Seasick Steve.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah.
And I kind of what I kind of mean by that is like it's got a sort of creaky kind of ramshackle sound to it, lots of distortion on the guitars, and it just kind of feels like it could fall apart at any moment. But there's also quite a cool, like grainy sort of echoey modification on the vocals, which gives it this kind of really old school blues vibe. So I think if you like the sound of that, then you should get a lot out of this. There's a kind of the stomp of the kind of drum beat reminds me a wee bit of Bron Stomp by Led Zeppelin. And I think it is just that kind of drum thump that kind of permeates throughout the song. It doesn't sound that much like Bron Stomp, really. I think it's just that familiar kind of drum sound. And then there's like there was like this like sliding chord progression that was really bugging me while I was listening to the song. It's like really familiar, and I was tearing my hair out for ages about it, and then eventually remembered that the song I was thinking of was on the Billy Madison soundtrack. If you're familiar with that film,
Right, okay.
it's an old Adam Sandler as like one of his first films, and there's a scene where he like drives up to. He's basically a 30-year-old man going back and going through redoing his high school. He's got to graduate from high school, and he pulls up to the high school in like a sort of cool sports car, blasting 80s rock music, and the sort of teenager at the time just kind of sneer at him, trying to be cool. But long story short, that song is a classic 80s track, The Stroke by Billy Squier. I mean, I didn't know that's what it was called, but
Right, okay.
and it's a long story to tell just for like to one specific part of the song, but it was really bothering me, so I made a point.
Just that kind of sliding guitar
just like-
progression.
It's like does it go into the? It's like there's like a bridge section after the sort of the sort of main verse. It's like a sliding sort of guitar bit that I'm not sure how to describe it, but if you go and listen to Ain't No Man with Money and then go and listen to The Stroke by Billy Squier, you'll know the bit I mean. So anyway, that was a long way to get a point that doesn't really matter all that much. But anyway, it's a good song. It's a really good song. And it's just kind of this ramshackle blues song with lyrics about not having a fancy car or a fancy house. I ain't no man with money. So yeah, I think this is like a solid 8 out of 10 for me.
That's basically what I've given it as well. I've got quite into him.
Yeah.
I've kind of tuned into the Church of Fantastic a few times as well. He, as you quite rightly said, kind of living in the Netherlands at the moment. And he's kind of said the live music isn't really a thing in the Netherlands, or at least isn't at the moment. So he's currently kind of playing from the comfort of his own home for the time being, and you can kind of tune into him on the Church of Fantastic every Sunday at 3 o'clock UK time. I've kind of missed it a lot of the times, to be honest, because like I've either got the kids or I'm working or what have you. But I have went back and watched the videos. And yeah, I really enjoy it. He's only on for maybe like half an hour, but I think that's kind of deliberate. I remember him mentioning something about that being the ideal amount of time for live streaming or something like that.
I think so. I mean, like you start to lose your
Kind of
attention.
momentum after a while.
Yeah, but we both watched one of those streams at the same time.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. I mean, he threw out a couple of covers, Nine Inch Nails' Hurt and Land of the Rising Sun by the Animals. So it's always good to hear. But yeah, I think that's good. Like doing a regular kind of live stream every Sunday. Definitely worth checking out for sure.
Yeah, definitely. As I said, I mean, I think the guy comes across as being really personable. I can see why he's got as many followers as he does. And as I said, well, as you were saying there, like I get the impression that he's a character. You know what I mean? He's a genuine, unconventional kind of bohemian type person. With something truly unique to offer. So I'm looking forward to when his debut album comes out. I think it'll be really interesting.
Yeah, I on the basis of this song anyway, I'm keen to see what the albums sound like.
I think the last time I checked, there's maybe 3 songs on Spotify. So this being one of them. I think there's another song called, I'm gonna get it wrong. Ain't nobody like my father or something like that. And then there's another one called Drag Me to Hell, which is amazing.
That's the one I was trying to remember. Drag Me to Hell. It's a Sam Raimi horror film.
It is. Yeah, it is. Is that the one about the Dibbit box? No.
I've not, to be honest, I haven't seen it. I just know that it's a Sam Raimi horror film. That's
Right, okay.
that's where my knowledge of Drag Me to Hell begins and ends.
Fair enough.
And it's also a song by Fantastic, so there you go.
It's also a song by Fantastic. That's definitely worth checking out. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, sorry, that was Ain't No Man with Money by Fantastic. What you got for me the next episode, Granty?
I have The Spirit Of by the Cloud Nothings.
The Spirit Of?
The Spirit Of by Cloud Nothings. This was released on the 17th of November on Car Park Records. It's approximately 2 minutes and 30 seconds long. The band themselves are an American indie band from Cleveland, Ohio, and is the second single from what will be the band's 8th studio album.
Okay.
Shadow I Remember, which I think is due to be released on the 26th of February 2021, so next year.
The name The Cloud Nothings does sound familiar, to be honest, but I don't know if I've actually heard them, but cool, okay. The Spirit Of by Cloud Nothings, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have I have got a song. Oh, I haven't actually written down the name of the song. Bear with me.
Can you remember it?
Oh God, it's oh, something machines. Oh, what's it called?
Do you know the name of the band?
Yeah, I know the name of the band. I've at least
Something
written down the name of the
Machines
band.
by the Somethings.
So the band is called 303, which is with just the number 3,
All right.
exclamation mark 3.
303.
303, and that's featuring 100 Gex. Don't know if you've heard of them.
Familiar.
303.
As in Gex, spelled G-E.
GECS.
Is that 100 geckos, you think?
Oh, pass. No, I don't know. I don't know what that
An
means.
army of geckos.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm trying to type in 303 into Spotify and it's not happening. It's called Lonely Machines, right? Okay.
Lonely Machines,
Took
okay.
20 minutes to get that, but we're there. So we'll cut all of that bit out and then I'll just be like, oh yeah, it's Lonely Machines by
Yeah, got it one, man. Boom.
100 Gex. So 303 are they're an American electronic duo. They've been kicking around since 2004. And as far as I can tell, I mean, I've only kind of listened to one other track just to get the idea what they sounded like. And it's kind of like sort of sickly, poppy, radio friendly kind of electronic stuff, which from the one other song I listened to didn't really sound that much like my bag, to be honest. And 100 Gex they're another American electronic duo, but they're like far more like avant-garde, and they seem to be like they're really quite popular with sort of I don't know, teens and early people in their early 20s and whatnot, and they're the kind of band that if you listen to them, they're the kind of band that makes old people like shout about how there's no good music these days. Like it's that kind of divisive, I think. So those two artists, not necessarily my cup of tea, but I quite like this track. I think it's quite good. I mean, it's totally outside of my usual kind of wheelhouse, but the kind of closest thing I can kind of compare to this kind of thing is maybe like Crystal Castles or something like that, who are kind of like they're a sort of electronic band that they're a bit all over the place, but quite good for it. So I haven't particularly described this all that well, but that's probably a good thing. Just kind of go in fresh and not really know what to expect from it. But I quite like this track.
Okay.
I don't necessarily like what the other stuff that the artists have done, but I think this is pretty good.
Okay. Cool.
So, that took far too long, but anyway. So we've got Spirit of by Cloud Nothings and Lonely Machines by 303 featuring 100 Gex. Okay, let's just get on with the submission corner then.
Yep.
If you're listening and have something like us to hear, whether it's you, your band, a friend's band, whatever, then you can just send it to us at theheadscratcher@outlook.com, or just like fire us a message on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever. We'll, or just comment on a post, or there are a lot of ways you can send us your shit. So this time round we've got singles from Edinburgh singer-songwriter Jack Hinks and London indie folk duo Radiant Heart. I'm just going to start with Jack Hinks, I think.
Sure, man. Yeah.
So yeah, this first single submission is Jigsaw by Jack Hinks, who, as I said, is an Edinburgh-based singer, songwriter, and producer. And this came out on the 20th of November. It's fairly recently. The press release for this track states that the inspiration for this was to write a series of songs on the process of grief. And this song, Jigsaw in particular, explores the idea of acceptance and addressing themes of identity, independence, and inner worth. It's just over 4 minutes long, and it's a sort of dreamy, soothing, melancholy number, but with a fairly sprightly tempo that still allows for a bit of a swing of the hips and a nod of the head. It opens with a sort of muted chord and picking, followed by this really cool like bass lick that repeats over and over throughout the song, and the whole thing is held together by a kind of soft, driving drum beat, complemented by a melancholy violin whine. It's quite sort of smooth, jazzy style number, and there's even a bit of scat singing coming into play in the kind of final third. So I quite enjoyed this. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it, man. Well, what I've written here is I immediately liked the song. The opening few bars for me felt a wee bit reminiscent of something Bombay Bicycle Club might have done.
Okay.
And I think that's thanks in part to the opening kind of splash of cymbals and the male and female kind of vocal harmonies. However, that similarity was fairly short-lived, if I'm honest. The vocal harmonies are, however, a reoccurring feature throughout the course of the song, and I think they work really well. I wasn't a huge fan of that kind of scat singing and
Yeah.
the towards the end of the song. However, there's a pretty slick Gilmore-esque guitar solo around the kind of 2 minute 13-second mark, which is beautifully accompanied by Fiona Liddell on violin, whom is also the same person responsible for the aforementioned vocal harmonies. I was actually considering putting this on the November positivity playlist, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Because as you said, according to the kind of press release, Jack tasked himself to write a song representing each stage of grief, and chose to begin with acceptance, which, if you know your stuff, and in particular the kind of Kubler-Ross 5-stage model of grief, it's the last stage of the model. The song aims to focus on the process's cylindrical nature and addresses issues such as independence, integrity, and a journey towards cultivating a new identity and inner worth. And I think that really comes through, to be honest, in the song's lyrical content. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I ended up watching quite a few of his videos online as well. There's a song in there called Retail from towards the end of the last year, I believe, which has a bit of a kind of Jamie Lenman vibe to it, that's really worth checking out. Also came across another one of his videos from a few years back called Nameless So Far, which is an instrumental piece which he plays in Armstrong's vintage clothes emporium in Edinburgh.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Which makes for a really quite interesting video, because the camera kind of follows him as he's kind of walking in through the clothes shop, and there's all these kind of weird and wonderful clothes and masks and stuff like that, so it's quite cool. And the actual piece is amazing. He plays in this kind of flamenco classical guitar style and uses the side of the guitar to make some really interesting sounds. And the kind of the speed at which he plays is nothing short of phenomenal. Like, it's really worth checking out.
Nice. I didn't. I don't think I heard it. I've not seen those videos. I mean, I obviously watched the video for Jigsaw, which is just kind of a fairly slick kind of live performance. It's some kind of sort of choice green lighting. It's quite cool. But I had a wee listen to his Icarus EP from 2016. So that's quite similar to this. So I think if you like Jigsaw, then you probably like the Icarus EP as well. It's pretty decent. But yeah, really good song. Like you mentioned, the vocal harmonies are really good. And yeah, I think definitely worth a listen. Probably give it an 8 out of 10.
I haven't rated it, but yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll settle on an 8.
Settle on it.
Cool. So that was the single Jigsaw by Jack. Hinks.
One more time. Some people stay the same, but I'm not the man that you once knew. Met the key that keeps you apart.
Okay, so the other one we got sent to us is All the World for Him, spelled with a 4, from Radiant Heart. And this hasn't come out yet, although by the time this goes up, it will be out. So it comes out on the 1st of December. So yeah, like I said, by the time this goes up, it will be out, so you can listen to it. So Radiant Heart are a kind of indie folk duo from London, and this is the first single from their album Brocken Spectre, which also comes out on that same day, December 1st. I initially thought Brocken Spectre was a typo.
Oh, is it? Because I've written Broken Spectre. Brocken.
It's Brocken Spectre because I originally thought it was a typo in the email, and then I looked around like on everything, like on the video, on like all the material, it's Brocken Spectre. So it's like you can't get that typo every time. And it turns out that Brocken Spectre is a magnified shadow of an observer cast on the clouds in the opposite direction to the sun. So you imagine somebody up on top of a mountain with the sun at their back, and kind of they're projecting their massive shadow onto a cloud. So that's a Brocken Spectre. So
fair enough.
So, yeah. I meant to say earlier that I found out that Aha are Norwegian. From that Manhattan Skyline thing. So I also now know what a Brocken Spectre is. So I've learned quite a lot on this podcast already.
Yeah.
So anyway, so All the World for Him is the first single from the album, and apparently tells the story of a real life experience that the band members Celia McDougall and Chris Moore had while out swimming one day. I think a young boy started drowning. Chris jumped in to try and save him and nearly drowned himself, which was a fairly traumatizing experience for everybody involved. So this track, the lyrics and the kind of sound of it, I suppose, are kind of partly based on that and the experiences of young love, I think. Is what they've said. So it opens with this kind of slow, ponderous acoustic guitar before layering up with sort of soothing vocal harmonies and a mixture of both kind of bassy and tinkling piano melodies, which weave in and out of the main melody. These kind of restrained male and female vocals and acoustic melodies remind me a lot of bands like Tunng, who we're going to talk more about later. And it's incredibly relaxing to listen to. There's not a ton of variation throughout the song. There's the odd piano flourish here and there. So I think the song's only just over 2.5 minutes. So with that in mind, it kind of manages to not overstay its welcome. I think if it was a bit longer, without doing much more, then it might become a bit boring. But at its kind of current length, I think it's decent. And there's an opening melody on there that reminds me a bit of the song "How Many Roads Must a Man Walk Down" by Joan Baez. Is that even how you pronounce Joan Baez?
Joan Baez and Bob Dylan.
And Bob Dylan, yeah. And it kind of
See that? I never actually thought of that.
There's just a sort of, I think it's the first bit.
Just a moment.
Just like the first few words of the verse or something, I've got that kind of same melody, and then it goes in a totally different kind of more like melancholy direction. But I like when there's bits and pieces like that kind of sprinkled in music, and I didn't have to tell like a 40-minute story to explain where that bit of music was from. But anyway, I think it's pretty good. The instrumentation's good. Vocals are strong enough. I think your reaction to this is kind of going to depend on your tolerance, your general tolerance to like kind of indie acoustic music, really. But be keen to hear what the rest of the album sounds like compared to this, definitely.
It kind of reminded me a wee bit of like the Moldy Peaches, and I don't know if that's just because of the kind of male and female vocals.
Yeah.
Also a wee bit of have you ever heard of Luke Ritchie?
No, I don't think so.
So that's the actor Charlotte Ritchie's brother.
Who's Charlotte Ritchie?
Charlotte Ritchie was in Fresh Meat, and I think she's been on Call the Midwife. Not that I've watched that, but
It's
I
the
know she's
program
in.
that my mum watches, but
I'm quite into Charlotte Ritchie. Like she's a bit of a crush of mine. But Luke Ritchie's stuff has kind of featured on the soundtrack for Fresh Meat, and occasionally they do stuff together. And again, it's nice. It's worth checking out. I think there's only maybe a handful of songs available on YouTube, but it did kind of remind me of that as well.
cool. Well, I've given this a 7 out of 10. I think it's pretty good.
I would agree with you there, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if the whole album is kind of like it doesn't vary too much from this. I don't. I
I
maybe.
think that would be a hard listen. Like I mean, I enjoyed this song, but I mean, if the whole album was like this, it could get quite samey.
Yeah, totally. But it's just guessing, really, isn't it? So
Totally,
I'm looking forward to hear that when it comes out on
definitely.
December 1st. So that was All the World for Him by Radiant Heart.
It's the end. He met in spring. He was handsome and good. He tattooed my name that just to prove all the world for him.
Cool. Okay, fired through those pretty quickly.
What we gonna go for? Norma Macdonald first. Just doing it in
I
chronological
think
order.
just for chronological order, just stick with that.
Do you want me to lead on this one?
Yeah, go for it, man.
Yeah. So we're now going to be looking at Old Futures by Norma Macdonald. This was released on the 24th of the 4th earlier on this year on Noise Records. There's 10 songs on the album, and it's approximately 36 minutes and 50 seconds long, so just under 40 minutes. And it's an album that was recommended to us off the back of our interview with Chad Peck from Kestrels. Chad is, of course, Norma's partner, as we found out in the interview, and owner of Noise Records. We advised that we have a look at, especially as Norma provided some of the vocals on the latest Kestrels album, Dream or Don't Dream, which we discussed with him in depth in the interview. And we did, and although it's not really our usual MO, I have to admit I was pleasantly surprised. I did listen to it quite a bit. I really enjoyed having it on in the background when I was doing things around the house and kind of in the car. Just a wee bit about the artist. So this is Norma's 5th studio album to date. She was born in Cape Breton and is very much a staple of the Halifax music scene, and is in fact a member of the supergroup Bend the River. She's also an ER nurse and is currently working towards her master's degree. For my money, this album is pretty much a straight up country or Americana album. However, there are songs on here that I believe could quite easily sit alongside indie folk or alt indie artists such as First Aid Kit, for example. Particularly songs like Trick of the Light, which is the second song on the album and is probably one of my favourites. That kind of prelude or breakdown that you get just before what I suppose is the chorus, where she sings, "It's so hard to get it right, all these shadows that we hold so tight," before going on to sing that Got to Let Go. It's just a trick of the light. It's so immediate and engaging. I just felt it was a really big hook in the song, and her vocals are just impeccable. I've kind of described them as incandescent, and they're absolutely flawless throughout the course of the album, in my opinion. What was
Yeah,
your thoughts, mate?
the Darla Records website describes her voice as tinging in the tension between storyteller folk and classic country, which I think is
Ah,
really accurate
yeah.
description of kind of the overall sound of the record as well. So I was kind of dreading this because, um, like you said, it's kind of out with our usual kind of MO, and having kind of listened when I kind of pressed play on the first track, Temperamental Year, I was kind of taken aback because I thought it was quite a Dolly Parton sort of vibe to it.
There's
And,
definitely a bit of kind of Dolly Parton in this album. But I
yeah,
think it was always our intention. Like if you kind of read about the album online, um, I think the working title of the album was originally Death by Nostalgia, I think.
okay.
So I think she drew on quite a lot of our influences, like, from kind of 60s and 70s, and you can definitely see that in quite a few songs, like Wedding Day comes to mind. That definitely does feel like a kind of Dolly Parton number. Um,
Absolutely. Um, and okay, I'm saying sort of, I immediately got that sort of Dolly Parton hit, and I don't really have any beef with Dolly Parton, but I have been fairly vocal on my dislike
Dolly Parton.
of no my dislike of country music in general.
Yeah.
I've mentioned that a couple of times on this podcast,
I know
and
that slide guitars is your kryptonite.
yeah, like that sort of slide guitar sound and sort of general kind of honky tonk is it just turns me right off. But having said that, um, I do think Temperamental Year is actually quite a good song, and having listened to this album several times now, and it's only, I mean, it's not that much longer than half an hour, so
No.
that's pretty easy to do. I think objectively, I think this is a really good album. Um, there are bits on it that are definitely not for me, but I do think it is, it's a good album, definitely. Like I said, Norma's vocals are fantastic. Um, kind of the acoustic guitar lines in general are really bright and catchy. Sort of honky tonk and slide guitar doesn't overpower everything for the most part. There are bits of slide guitar in there, but most of the time they're kind of in the background. And so, if you do like that kind of thing, it is there. And there's a bit of Dolly Parton, there's a bit of the Eagles, there's even a bit of Fleetwood Mac in there, I would say. Um,
I did think of, I can't quite remember what song it was, but it's interesting you say that because I can't quite remember what song it is off the top of my head, but I did think Phoenix coming through every now and again.
Sorry?
I did feel like a wee bit of Stevie Nicks coming through every now and again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think on Trick of the Light there's a bit of that. But I think also on Wonder in the Summer, I think that is very, very Fleetwood Mac esque, for big parts of it at least, and it's got that kind of, there's a sort of side to Fleetwood Mac that is there's a really kind of, they've got a really sort of vintage rock and roll kind of swing to them, and that's all over Wonder in the Summer. But definitely there are there's definitely some Stevie Nicks on here for sure. Um, I think, I mean, you mentioned your wedding day. It's a bit too much for me. This guitar style and the guitar tone is too kind of classic country for me. Again, I can't out flat out say it's a bad song because it absolutely is not. It's just not for me. But there is stuff on here that I do really like. Um, I think Trick of the Light's really good.
It's amazing.
I think One Man Band is possibly my favorite song on the album. I just like it. I mean, and that's where it goes a bit more indie. acoustic, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
It's got this kind of gentle acoustic guitar. The vocal melodies and harmonies are wonderful. And the way the song just layers up with the kind of the light driving drum beat and the accompanying strings. Really, really great song. Wonder in the Summer, I mentioned before, was decent. I think Slow Down Marie's pretty good. It's quite a slow burning song.
Yeah.
It's got this kind of plodding bass and kind of far away sounding guitars. And there's these kind of stirring violin stabs that come in, just add a bit of depth and sort of grandeur to the proceedings. That was a weird sound I made there. I already have a shadow as well. I like that because it's kind of sort of 50s dance hall dance kind of song.
I described it as it kind of felt like a kind of waltz or like something that you might hear in a movie during an American prom scene.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the sort of vibe I was getting from that. And it's got like this kind of shadows, like the shadows kind of guitar arpeggio kind of throughout the verses, and that kind of slow kind of bass line, and like it's got that kind of echoing tambourine sound that you sound of that kind of era. So yeah, another good song, and I think Lover of Unreason is also very good. A sort of acoustic ballad with some really, really great guitar picking. And a sort of shuffling, almost marching band drumming throughout it. There is a threat later on in the song for the country guitars to kind of overpower everything, but they don't really do that. So, and there's a really good guitar solo in there as well that mimics the melody. So, closing track, Some Days, is again a bit too country for me.
I would have said that I would have maybe swapped out Some Days for Lover of Unreason as album closer. That was my thinking at the time.
It's got a little bit of a Stand By Your Man vibe to it. But I quite like Stand By Your Man, but I'm not a fan of Some Days really. But it's got that kind of cowboy vibe to it, you know, like just like a cowboy on the back of a horse kind of thing.
Right.
I don't know really how to describe it. There's a specific sort of sound in country music that is just a cowboy, like just kind of cantering along on a horse.
Moseying along.
Yeah, moseying on. Yeah, it's probably the term. So yeah, I think this is pretty good, and there's quite a few kind of standout songs on it. And after kind of initially being worried that I wouldn't have anything good to say about this, but I've actually got quite a lot of good things to say about it, which I'm quite pleased about.
Yeah,
because I don't particularly like being negative about things.
What did you rate it?
I've given it a 7 out of 10, man.
Yeah, I was the same.
And I think
fair.
I think if you're more familiar with this kind of thing and you like this thing, I think you probably would rate it higher. But I think because it's not really my bag, but I can still see the quality in it.
Yeah, I think you made a good point when we were kind of discussing it before. You said that it's probably a really good example of the genre. But as you said, it's not something either of us would really listen to.
Yeah. But I mean, there's definitely a few songs in here that I will absolutely go back to and listen to. Definitely. Cool. Okay, so that was Odd Future by Norma Macdonald.
Mm-hmm.
There's a darkness and a freedom. There's a sound you're trying to hear. Gotta let go. It's just a trick of the light. Don't turn your back on the golden age. But I'm here to tell you, there's a warm wind blowing through. Your wandering summer
So next one we've got here is from Eels. It's called Earth to Dora. It was released on the 30th of October. It's 12 tracks and roughly 43 minutes long. So Earth to Dora's 13th studio album by American alt-rock weirdos Eels, the brainchild of Mark Oliver Everett, who I think is the only permanent member of the band.
Yeah.
Now, it's kind of mental to me that this is their 13th album. I kind of consider myself as an Eels fan, but I think I've only really heard about 6 of those albums, including this one. But you know, they've been on the go for quite a while, so.
Because did their first album come out in like 1996, 1997, something like that?
Yeah. Beautiful Freak. I think it was 1996 it came out. And that's got a few of their best known songs on it, like My Beloved Monster, which if you've seen Shrek, you'll know. Novocaine for the Soul, which is on if you remember Dom Jolly's Trigger Happy TV, it was on there. There'll be a few others, like Susan's House is a really good track on that album. That's actually like sort of growing up, getting into sort of alternative music. That was one of my favorite albums. Actually, Beautiful Freak is really good. But I've kind of just dipped in and out of their stuff. Like,
I remember you gave me a shot of Souljacker.
Yeah, Souljacker. And Souljacker is like a lot rockier than I think they normally are. I mean, Beautiful Freak isn't. It's got a mixture, I suppose, of the sort of stuff they're known for, like acoustic stuff and kind of slow downbeat stuff. But there's experimental stuff on it, where Souljacker is much more rockier. There's Daisies of the Galaxy, which is more acoustic driven, but the title track on that has got a song. It's basically about a man and a boy on the run who go and sit in a movie theater and watch Terminator 2. You don't necessarily get that from the lyrics, but that's what it's apparently about. And Souljacker's got the song
Souljacker Part 1, and then it's got I can't remember the name of the song, but it was used in Monkey
Dust.
Monkey Dust. That's it.
So like I said, Souljacker Part 1 and 2 is really rocky tracks. But yeah, it's called That's Not Really Funny, which is theme tune for Monkey Dust, which is probably the most harrowing adult animated comedy that's ever been created. So if you like really grim comedy, then Monkey Dust comes highly recommended.
How many series were there?
I think there were 3 series, but I think only one was ever released on DVD.
I thought that.
But I think there were actually 3 seasons of it. But yeah, really underrated show, I think. So definitely check that one out. So anyway, should probably talk about the new album. They did have an album out in 2018 called The Deconstruction.
Yeah.
Which I was quite anticipating it coming out, and then when it did come out, I wasn't really all that wowed by it, and I just I not supposed to really gave it that much of a chance. And then with this new album, again, I don't think I was immediately wowed by it either, but I've given this far more of a chance to settle in, and overall, I think it's a really good album. What's your overall thoughts on this?
I mean, I'm not a massive Eels fan. You're like kind of similar to yourself. I've kind of dipped in and out over the years. For me, it kind of felt as if I had all the hallmarks of what people have come to expect of an Eels album. It's a really easy listen. It's got E's kind of trademark gravelly spoken word vocal delivery. It's beautifully textured. A lot of the songs have quite a bit of depth. There's quite a lot going on in a lot of the tracks in terms of kind of the musical arrangement, perhaps with the exception of the last song in the album, Waking Up. In fact, I think there's maybe a couple of songs that are pretty much just straightforward acoustic numbers. And although I've kind of said that it's got kind of E's trademark kind of spoken word vocal delivery, there were times where I thought he kind of felt as if he was kind of channeling some Nick Cave, late Johnny Cash kind of vibes, particularly on Waking Up, um, which I really quite enjoyed. With regards to the kind of lyrical content, um, a lot of the tracks feel quite melancholic. However, there's also a great deal of optimism in there as well.
Yeah.
Such as on track number 2, Are We All Right Again, which we featured as part of the November Positively playlist, and for my money kind of felt a wee bit reminiscent of Fresh Feeling from the band's 2001 album Souljacker, as we kind of mentioned earlier on. The kind of track opens with this kind of jaunty sounding keyboard melody, a shaker, kind of shuffling drum beat, and it has this really kind of uplifting chorus section. In particular, I love the bit where he's kind of talking about the birds and the bees singing to him. Particularly the bit where I think the birds and bees say something like to him, "Do you want to get high?" And he's like, "Yeah, I do." I quite like that.
He's later talking about, is there not a bit where he goes, "Hey, Mr. Bluebird, give me a hit of that"?
And then give it to the Meiji cat or something.
So it's kind of psychedelic a wee bit, that song.
Yeah, it's good though. There's also kind of tracks that appear to deal with love and relationships, such as "Who You Say You Are," which I believe was the second single released from the album on the 1st of September. It's this kind of twinkling, floaty number in which E kind of questions whether his new beau is worth of his time or not, particularly whether she's worthy of a song or not. Similarly, there's song number 5, Dark and Dramatic, which follows along the same vein. There's also Gentle Souls as well, which perhaps one of the more kind of upbeat numbers on the album. Well, wait, what did you think?
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think, I mean, all of these songs are about relationships and different relationship experiences.
I think he recently just became divorced. So I don't know
Okay,
if
well,
that's maybe got.
that might have something to do with it. I
Yeah.
mean, if you, I mean, listen to the first song, and it's so like sickly sweet. Like the song's called "Anything for Boo," and it's like "Anything for Boo, oh Boo, I do, I do, I do, I do anything for Boo. My love is true. It's true. It's true. It's true." And it's listening to that is it's hard to listen to, but like the lyrics are so cringy. But um, I like the song in general. Um, like it's a good album opener, apart from maybe those kind of cringy lyrics. And then a lot of the other songs are more um, like "Who You Say You Are" is a sort of paranoid kind of song. Like you don't know whether you should be getting into a relationship with this person or not, kind of thing. And you've got "Dark and Dramatic," like you said, which is like, again, it's like somebody stuck in an unhealthy relationship.
Yeah.
But they're desperately in love with this person, but they know that they probably shouldn't be with them. And then "Are You Fucking Your Ex" is even
Oh,
more
yeah, that's
paranoid. Like that's one of the best songs, I think, just
good.
because it's got that kind of dark humor that the Eels are known for. And it's just a guy about like his wife or his girlfriend is kind of going out, not telling him where she's going. She's out for hours, and he's like, "Are you fucking your ex?" So it's
Isn't the lyric something like, "I get it, everybody loves sex, but I have to ask, are you fucking your ex?"
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a great song. And yeah, there's some really good stuff on here. "All of Unsent Letters," really beautiful, soulful, quite heartbreaking song, just kind of lamenting a past relationship and past mistakes. "Baby, Let's Make It Real." It's probably a toss up between that and "Are You Fucking Your Ex," over which is my favorite song.
Right.
And it's quite a forward looking song. I mean, that it's a forward looking song about getting into a relationship. With there's the line in the chorus, which is "Baby, you're a full meal, the way you make me feel," which is just a really simple, kind of quite genius line. Yeah, there's a lot of kind of acoustic-y instrumentation and kind of relatively clean guitars, but there's like the bass is really good in general all throughout the album. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this.
Yeah, absolutely, man. What did you rate it?
I think I've got a 9, to be honest.
Okay.
And I wasn't that excited about it when I first heard it, but actually listening to it through, I think it's a really solid album. And I think if you've ever been a fan of the Eels and you've not really bothered with them, then you should go back and you should definitely jump on this and check it out, because it's a pleasant surprise. I would say.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it. I gave it an 8 out of 10. But no, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not a massive Eels fan. I've just kind of dipped in and out of it. But yeah, for me, it's an Eels album. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I saw the Eels once at Tea in the Park. They were really good. I went and seen them on my own because nobody else knew who the fuck they were, and everyone else wanted to see Foo Fighters, and I was like, I've already seen Foo Fighters, and I didn't, and I was like, their new album's shit. So
was that the year that I went with you, or the year that I was there?
That was,
because I can't remember what.
I think that was that year actually. No, tell a lie, it wasn't. This was like in 2011 or something, and yeah, everybody wanted to watch Foo Fighters. I was like, fuck this, like, I'm going to see the Eels, and like no one would come with me, so I just got tanked up on vodka jellies. Like there was somebody going around like selling vodka jellies in the crowd just as Foo Fighters were like playing a couple of songs, and yeah, I just tanned about 8 of them, and then I went to see Eels, and I was absolutely fucked. And to be honest with you, don't really remember much about it, but I know that it was good. And I remember that it was a massive band. Like, I was kind of expecting it to just be E and like 2 or 3 other people, but there was tons of them on stage. Like, I'm sure he had like a full like a violin section or something. I mean, this might be my drunken memory.
And what did they sound like live? Can you remember?
I remember it being really good. And I think they played a few songs, like obviously played a few songs that I was keen to hear, but I think they played a few that I didn't know what they were. And other than that, I just remember kind of stumbling about into people.
Oh man!
So I imagine there were people there that were like, "Who's this drunken prick?" Like, he's just kind of. So I was talking to the person at the doorway to the tent for ages, like just. Before I went in, I was absolutely gubbed, but good times.
Because that's the thing, I don't suppose they're really the type of band that you go and see wrecked, are they? Like,
probably not, no. But I was buckled, but so yeah. So if the moral of that story is that Eels are quite good live, even if you can't remember.
You were there in spirit, if not in mind.
Yeah.
Body.
I don't know if that's how morals of stories work, but so yeah, good band, good album, and good live as well. Okay, so that was Earth to Dora by Eels.
Hey, Mr. Bluebird, give me a hit of that. Dear Dora, Earth to Dora. I know in my heart she's too dark and dramatic. I have to ask, are you fucking your ex? I chewed her up, threw her out. Yes.
next one is Tunng presents Dead Club by the band Tunng, obviously. And this came out on the 6th of November. It's 12 tracks and roughly an hour long. So Tunng, spelled Tunng, not like the oral appendage. They're a sort of indie folk band or folktronica band, as I've seen them referred to due to their extensive use of electronic sounds and samples within their music. The band consists of founders Mike Lindsay and Sam Genders, backed up by Ashley Bates, Phil Winter, Becky Jacobs, and Martin Smith. So as a whole, it's a large band. For those of you who have listened to our top 20 albums of all time, then you may remember that the band's 2010 album And Then We Saw Land featured on my list at number 18. So you should definitely go and check that out if you want to know my thoughts on that album. But Tunng typically write sort of wistful indie acoustic songs loaded with inventive lyrics, bolstered by the vocals and harmonies of Mike Lindsay and Becky Jacobs. The electronics woven into the songs bring a uniqueness to their sound, and it often makes for a weird sense of danceability to their music. So as much as I love And Then We Saw Land, I haven't really listened to that much of the other albums by the band. I've got Good Arrows, which I think came out in 2007. But other than that, I've only really listened to Lindsay's side project called Cheek Mountain Thief. I've got one of their albums, which is all right. But other than And Then We Saw Land, Good Arrows, and then this album, I haven't really listened to that much of their output. What's your exposure to Tunng generally?
I have actively avoided them for some reason. I have no idea why. I think I got it into my head that they were some sort of metal band. So when people have tried to speak to me about them before, I've just switched off completely. So I really didn't know what to expect from listening to this album, and I have to admit I was bowled over. Really enjoyed it. I've described it here as an evocative, thoughtful, and introspective exploration into the concept of death, dying, and all the thoughts and sentiments therein. Does that work for a sentence?
Very deep.
And it's a very deep album. I suppose to go into a bit more detail about, I suppose, the album's kind of formation. Mike Lindsay of the band, who've kind of mentioned there, has described it variously as being not just a record, it's a discussion, it's a podcast series, it's poetry, it's short stories that touch upon what their Bandcamp website describes as near untouchable subjects, i.e. grief, loss, the act of dying, where we go and what's left behind. And I think, to be honest, that's a pretty apt description. Just to give you a bit more background, again, according to their Bandcamp website rather, during the recording of their sixth album in 2018, lyricist Sam Genders found a novel entitled Grief is a Thing with Feathers by Max Porter, and was struck by how powerful it was, to the point where the book was then passed around the rest of the band members. The six members then went on to discuss the topic at length, and the project started to grow in arms and legs. They got Max Porter, the author of the aforementioned book, involved, and he subsequently wrote two new pieces for the album. Also cultivated a podcast series, which is produced by the bands Becky Jacobs and Sam Genders, in which they speak to philosophers, scientists, frontline workers, and more. And snippets of these kind of feature throughout the course of the album, including a wee guest spot from magician and mentalist Darren Brown on one of the album's later tracks.
Have you listened to any of the podcast?
I haven't, no. Have you?
Neither have I. I didn't know it existed until today when I was writing my notes. I think it would be interesting.
I don't know actually, because I listen to the Adam Buxton podcast fairly regularly, and he goes on. So he lost his mum and dad fairly recently in the grand scheme of things, like within the last few years.
Okay.
And I think he's been on a podcast called The Grief Cast, I want to say. But I don't know if this is the same thing or not. I don't know.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it's called. I just know there's like an 8-part um, series where they discuss. It's probably unlikely that it's the same podcast because I think it's specifically about the album,
Right.
how it
Okay.
was conceptualized um, and that kind of thing.
See, I wasn't too sure what to like. I just went into it blind, basically. It's quite clearly a concept album, though, as we said. But yeah, when I first listened to, so like on my first listen um, to the opening track, Eating the Dead, I was reminded of Pink Floyd's The Greatest Gig in the Sky off their Dark Side of the Moon album. Um, just for that wee kind of voice sample that you get in the Pink Floyd song, where there's a guy kind of talking about death and dying, and he can be heard saying something along the lines of, "I'm not frightened of death," or "I'm not frightened of dying. Any time will do. Why should I be frightened? You have to go sometime." And I thought the song was maybe like just in that moment, I thought the song was maybe a homage to that in some way, even though the songs are quite different. But as I since found out, like I said, the whole album is, of course, an exploration of that concept, and the song is in fact a nod to the Wari people or Vari people, is how you pronounce it, spelled Wari, also known as the Paca Nova from Brazil, whom reportedly eat their dead, or previously ate their dead. From what I've read, this ritual of eating your deceased relatives is no longer practiced. However, in the past, it was commonplace and was considered to be done out of the utmost respect for the person. The idea was that by consuming the flesh of the deceased, their spirit would live on the bodies of their relatives rather than wandering the forest or jungle on their own.
Okay. I found a similar culture in Paraguay called the Guayaki or Guayaki, and
Right.
they did a similar thing of treating the dead and preparing it, and then the whole tribe would eat the body, except for the family's loved ones, and
Well, I think it's the same with the Wari people. So, like, maybe aunts and uncles, but like that person's wife or equivalent of like their most kind of closest relatives wouldn't get involved
yeah.
in the practice.
And I mean the song is like about ritualistically devouring a body and the memories like of a dead individual. It's like
Yeah.
lay you on my kitchen table, cut you open tenderly, and then it goes on to like talk about eating their memories and all sorts of weird stuff like that. Um it's quite cool.
It's different, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like it's
very different.
um I liked it. Yeah, I liked it quite a lot. Um and there's a lot of that stuff throughout the course of the album. So like similarly track number 3, SDC, which stands for Swedish Death Cleaning,
Yeah,
touch on the practice of, wait for it, I'm gonna try and pronounce this, Dostantink. I think that's a pretty good
I think that's pretty
pronunciation.
good. Yeah.
Which is a simple living ethic and aesthetic which focuses on not burdening those that survive you with your earthly possessions. The song, or at least the song's chorus, is oddly upbeat, given the song's content, and includes kind of lush vocal harmonies, which is accompanied by some kind of gentle synth and ethereal kind of soundscapes that kind of vamp over the top of them. So yeah, the kind of the idea of kind of Swedish death cleaning sounds like a pretty good idea. I mean, at the end of the day, the last thing you want is for your relatives to discover all your skeletons in the cupboard, let alone your frankly excessive dildo collection.
I like that because I think a song about an album that's concept is about death could become a really
Quite
difficult
macabre roast, yeah.
and like um, depressing listen, but they've got like they throw in kind of twinges of humor and it makes it really kind of fun, but
Yeah.
like really engrossing and kind of. I mean, it's an eye opener because obviously we talked about the concept of eating the dead, and then this concept of sort of purging your life's your collection of trinkets that you've got over your life to kind of declutter and lessen the emotional impact of your passing on your loved ones, I suppose, to a certain extent, because I suppose it can be. I think that process of going through somebody's stuff and kind of all the memories coming flooding back is a difficult thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so there's that sort of stuff on the album. I really like the song that's sandwiched between those two tracks, "Death Is a New Sex," which is.
Oh yeah.
I kind of mentioned earlier that the band have got a way of making kind of indie acoustic songs almost danceable, and I think "Death Is a New Sex" is a really good example of that. It's got a kind of apocalyptic electronic bass thump that opens the song out, and it's got like that's accompanied by this quite mournful guitar lick, but the chorus is really quite upbeat. Which goes, "Death is a new sex, everybody's talking about it. Death is a new sex, coming soon to fuck us all." Yeah. And again, there's that sort of tongue-in-cheek humour, and just a really memorable, catchy chorus. And it ends again on that kind of that apocalyptic electronic comes back to the forefront. I think it's it kind of picks the pace up after this kind of the slowness of eating the dead, and it kind of yeah, like I said, it picks the pace up a bit and draws you into the album a bit further after that kind of intriguing opener. And they do that a lot, just kind of masterfully melding all these different electronics and instruments and vocals. I mean, Three Birds is probably the most kind of familiar Tunng sounding song.
Right, okay.
To me, it's got this kind of stripped back opening with a kind of, it's quite a familiar violin kind of plucking sound that I've heard them do before, which then combines with kind of arpeggio guitar and really soothing harmonizing vocals. And the lyrics of that song are delivered in almost like a children's nursery rhyme.
That's how I've described it, like a kind of macabre kind of nursery rhyme.
And just the way they combine all these elements together, like it's really, really impressive.
It's interesting because like the first time I listened to this album, I was actually walking around Eglinton Park at the time, because we've recently had quite a lot of rain. It's been flooded, like a lot of it's flooded, like you can't use a lot of the tracks. And it just seemed so apt at the time, because the opening lines of Three Birds is three boys lost in the flood, three families torn apart, three stars over the wood, three birds beneath the stars. So yeah, it was quite apt as I was trekking about there. But yeah, there's I mean, that song kind of reminded me a bit of the Decemberists, to be honest, which I suppose is another kind of indie, kind of folk or alt indie kind of band. I was also reminded a bit of kind of Belle and Sebastian as well.
Yeah, okay.
On the likes of A Million Colours and Carry You, which I really liked. I really like Carry You. It kind of hit a chord with me. It's about kind of reminiscing and remembering people who've passed away, and how our memories of them are triggered by simple things such as in a fall of snow, in an open wound, in a summer coat, in an angry word, in a burst of hope, on the telephone, at the water's edge, and so on, and how we carry them with us wherever we go. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought Last Day as well, that was interesting. Kind of use a sample of someone taking a kind of sharp intake of breath to kind of keep time throughout the course of the song, which I thought was quite an interesting thing. It's got this kind of interesting kind of rattly bit in there as well. The vocal harmonies are really good. I wasn't too sure about the lyrical content? Like, is it about an outer body experience?
No, I think it's literally about experiencing your final day on Earth.
Right.
Because
So
there's
I
the
thought
sort
that
of section.
because, like, I thought that because, like, towards the end of the song, it kind of talks about, I think there's this kind of modulated or computerized electronic voice kind of will shout something like cat or tree, like this could be the last tree of your life, this could be the last chair of your life. But at the start of the song, it talks about how this woman can see her severed, like, toes, I think. Like,
Yeah, I don't know. It
yeah,
could be a
I don't
combination
know.
of it's probably not as simple as it's just a commentary on somebody's last day. There probably is some kind of existential element to it, or out of body experience, or whatnot. I just think that sample of using that intake of breath is a really clever kind of thing, 'cause it sort of forms a point on the drum beat.
Yeah.
And it's almost like when you consider the last day, it's all it lists kind of all these last things you do on Earth, and then that intake of breath. It's like your last
That could
intake
be
of
a last
breath as
breath.
well. It's quite it's a very, like you say, a very interesting concept.
I remember feeling a wee bit disappointed that the woman. So there's a kind of voice clip later on, maybe kind of halfway through the song, and I kind of felt as if she was going to start rapping for some reason, and I was quite disappointed that she didn't. I don't know if this is maybe one of the other kind of philosophers or whatever that maybe kind of features in the podcast or whatever, but yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know why. For some reason, I thought that she was going to go into this kind of monotonous kind of rap, and I was like, oh.
All right. Well, note to tongue. Get your philosophers to
I
rap.
want more philosophers rapping, mate.
Yeah,
That's all
absolutely.
I'm asking for.
But there's that's all on a few tracks on the album. There are clips of um sort of nameless philosophers or whatever. There's a clip of Devin Brown, who you mentioned was on the podcast. He features on,
Fatally human?
is it yeah, Fatally Human. And then you were talking about Max Porter, the author of that book, which I forget the name of. But he wrote, and I believe he delivers the spoken word on
Oh,
Man
see.
and on Women. And I think it's him. I couldn't find anything to back that up other than I went and listened to a clip of him in an interview on YouTube, and I thought, yeah, that sounds like him. But
I
it
quite
might
enjoyed
not
those two
necessarily.
as well. Like I kind of, for some reason, it reminded me a wee bit of Scroopius Pip.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it. Um, I did think that maybe kind of Fatally Human would be the better song to end the album. However, saying that, I can understand why they chose Women, because in Fatally Human, I think it starts with a clip of Darren Brown where he kind of talks about how um, he's kind of musing about how he thinks that death or the end of life should ideally be like the end of a book or a movie, that there's some sort of resolution or finish and that it kind of comes to an end. And obviously, in Women, they kind of talk about it's kind of written from the perspective of an archaeologist, I
Yeah, yeah,
think,
absolutely.
kind of discovering a kind of Viking woman and what her life was like. And I suppose the archaeologist is reading this woman's body like a book. Um, kind of talks about how she lived, how her husband Eric came over to England and is now buried 5 meters beneath Lidl's car park in Essex. But then he
Joined
kind of
the
lives
Dead Club
on.
in England.
He joined the Dead Club in England, yeah. But then how he kind of lives on as well, like he kind of lives on in terms of like his genetics. Like there's parts of Eric and Jacob. I think the kind of character's name's Jacob, who's kind of sitting smoking fags somewhere on the street, and how it also says that part of Eric is now into the black water, and now he's fallen as a part of rain as her body kind of disintegrates and stuff. I thought it was quite good.
Yeah, yeah, it's a pretty cool It's a really good ending track, definitely. And I hadn't really connected that part of Fatally Human with women in terms of kind of reading the person's past like a book. But I think that's quite an astute point to make. I think while we were talking about women, like there's obviously Man is the companion track to that because it's both the same. They're both written by the same. Well, the spoken word at least is written by the same person and delivered by the same person, and that is kind of. You've got to draw comparisons with LYR's Calling the Crash Team on these tracks, and I mean in other parts of the album as well, because the delivery of the vocals by Tunng's main vocalists is often almost spoken word in the way it's delivered. I think they play to their strengths because I don't think either of them are like amazing singers. I think they tend to sing in a certain way and play to their strengths, which is really effective. But on Man and Woman, it is full on spoken word with kind of these instrumental soundscapes that it's delivered over. And yeah, it's hard not to compare that to LYR, and in particular, like even some of the turns of phrase that are used on Man and can be compared to the sort of things that Simon Armitage was doing on Calling the Crash Team. Like there's a particular part which the song Man is a song about a man on his deathbed, basically.
Yeah.
And there's a moment where he's described as his crumbling architecture like a balsa wood cathedral, his buttresses and columns collapsing and us obliged to notice. And it's exactly the kind of clever kind of sort of simile and metaphor that's used on Calling the Crash Team that's really effective.
Mm-hmm. No, I really enjoyed both those pieces. I never actually thought about it. I didn't think of LYR at the time, but you're absolutely right, man. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, so I suppose I'm just left to ask you how you would rate this.
I would give it. I'm tempted to give it a 10 out of 10, man. To be honest,
I am too, because I don't know. It's a really.
I can't fault it at all. Sorry, mate.
Sorry.
I'm saying I can't fault it at all.
Well, that's what I've written here. I've written practically flawless, and it's like I don't think. I mean, there's going to be people that listen to this and be like, can't be bothered with it at all. Definitely, but for me, yeah, I think this is brilliant.
Yeah, like I said, when we were kind of trying to arrange to record, I don't know why I've been avoiding them for so long. Like, I mean, this is this is amazing. Seems to be that I'm all about kind of spoken word stuff nowadays.
Yeah.
Because again, like with Calling the Crash Team, the LYR album, I wouldn't have given this the time of day 10, 15 years ago.
No, and I mean, I obviously, and Then We Saw Land is 10 years old now, so I suppose I can't say that I wouldn't have given this kind of thing the time of day 10 years ago, because I did, and it's still one of my favourite albums to this day, but it's not. I don't know if that is a more accessible album. It probably is. I don't think it's got a sort of concept, or if it does, I was kind of, I didn't care to kind of go that deep into it. I just like the songs.
Is it kind of like a maritime feel to it?
Yeah, and it's got a really kind of, although I think it was released in January or something, but it's got a really like autumnal kind of feel to it. It wasn't released in the autumn, but there's a song called October on it, and it's just got that kind of cold kind of, the leaves are off the trees kind of feel to it and stuff. But it's a really cool album. But I think I just took that album kind of on the face of it as being a collection of these really good songs, and this you kind of. I suppose with age you maybe delve into things a bit more deeply. I don't know if that's necessarily the case for everyone, but I think it probably is for me.
Maybe as we get older, we're having an existential crisis.
Yeah, possibly. So not having known Tunng or having listened to them before, would you say you've been tongued?
I've been tongued right up the jacksie.
That's going to be used as a clip for something. Just you saying you've been tongued. Cool. Okay. All right. Well, that was. Can't remember the name of the album. Tunng presents Dead Club, and that will be going into the Scottish Cast Hall of Fame.
Cool, man.
Cut you open tenderly. Death is a new sex coming soon to focus on a bath of baby clothes, a box of old dildos. 3 stars over the wood, 3 birds beneath the stars. Your eyes sparkled with mischief.
Because I firmly believe the light switch is off.
His crumbling architecture, like a balsa wood cathedral, his buttresses and columns collapsing.
Do you want me to lead on this one?
Yeah, go for it, man.
Okay. So next we're going to look at Dive by I Am The Avalanche. This was released on the 20th of November, earlier on this month, under record labels I Surrender Records and Big Scary Monsters in the UK. It features 10 songs and is approximately 29 minutes and 9 seconds long. The album is the band's 4th studio album to date and the first in new material in approximately 6 years. The band themselves are a kind of punk outfit based in Brooklyn, New York. The album opens with the first single to be released from the album, Better Days, which we featured on day number 9 of our Movember Positivity playlist. And I suppose for good reason. The song opens with the lyrics, "This is the last year I go on sinking, you're not fucking drowning, don't go on wasting another, yeah, this is the last time you go on wishing you stood for something." And as I said at the time, it feels like a rousing declaration of intent and a call for arms for everybody who refuses to go out without a fight. It's a perfect example of exuberant and riotous pub rock and oi that is guaranteed to have you defiantly fist pumping the air in no time. In an interview with Rock Sound, frontman Vinny Karuna, I think that's how you pronounce his name, said that he believed that this was the obvious first song to lead with and to release as a single. He described it as a musical statement in a way of reintroducing the band and letting their fans know that they're back and better than ever. Likewise, he described it as an Avalanche shrinking song. So I suppose, as I said, it does feel like a kind of pub rock kind of number. And he also followed this up by saying that it's also about friends and family. However, he was quick to identify that although a lot of the songs on the album may feel as if they're referencing things that have happened in 2020, the album was actually written pre-lockdown back in 2019.
Okay.
You're No Good to Me Dead, which is the second track in the album, to me feels like it follows along the same sort of vein as the first track. Particularly that kind of breakdown where they sing, "I'm going to make it right if it takes the rest of my fucking life," reminded me of an old NoFX song, kind of circa Tunng and Brooklyn era.
Okay.
And I was racking my brains trying to find the song, but I couldn't find it. It might just be a kind of familiar chord progression, but at the time I was thinking maybe Dying Degree or even kind of Laurie Myers. But I'm not too sure. I've listened to both tracks, and yeah, there's no kind of standout moments in either track that's like that I can kind of match the two up. Um, what was your initial thoughts with the first kind of opening tracks?
So obviously, I really like Better Days.
Yeah.
I think that's a really awesome song, really awesome way to kick the album off, and I think it's followed up fairly well with "You're No Good to Me Dead." But I feel like the rest of the album I feel is good, but
Yeah.
I almost feel like they've the they've started off with the best track on the album for me. But you know, there's some good stuff on here. It's like you mentioned no effects, but I get some kind of rancid vibes as well from like it's like the kind of gruff, kind of gravelly delivery, and I'm not that au fait with the actual band members of Rancid, so I don't know if it's Lars Frederiksen or Tim Armstrong I'm really comparing them to, or both, is it?
Both. For me, I know you're mentioning Rancid, but I think Dropkick Murphys.
Okay.
That I mean, for me, they reminded me a lot of kind of Dropkick Murphys. Like I said, it was just that one song. I mean, it was just that particular. I don't know if it was the lyrics or if it was just that kind of chord progression, but that's what made me um, think of No Effects. But I think by and large, they sound like Dropkick Murphys to me.
Yeah, I get bits of the Wild Hearts as well because
Right.
Ginger and Wild Hearts got that real kind of gruff delivery, and they're a sort of rollicking kind of punk, kind of rock and roll band. I suppose it's kind of pub rock kind of thing as
Yeah.
well. And I listed a bunch of bands from like the early 2000s because Vinny Karuna's previous band, the Movie Life, are kind of from that sort of scene, and a bunch of punk rock and sort of pop punk and post hardcore bands like there's like Alkaline Trio and Sum 41, maybe like bands even like Billy Talent or Bayside or Brand New or Taking Back Sunday. I've got a bunch in here. I've got Midtown, The Starting Line. Those bands don't necessarily all sound the same, but there's a kind of throwback nature to this album, I think, that harks back to that kind of period of music, and which I quite like. I mean, obviously, kind of grew up during that time, and I've got a lot of nostalgia for that era of music.
I definitely got a kind of post-hardcore vibe in kind of tracks number 4 and 5, Fake Weed and Love Song 69. Which
Love,
I've
Love Song 69 to me feels more like a ballad. Like,
well, that's kind of how I've described them as proper diamonds in the rough here. Emotive, melodic kind of ballads.
yeah.
It's maybe not those songs I'm thinking of. But certainly maybe towards the end of the album, there was kind of post-hardcore kind of vibe, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
Earthquake Weather is a bit heavier, maybe, than some of the other songs, at least in the intro. Maybe that's one of the ones. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think Love Song 69 to me is definitely more like the sort of obligatory. Um, it's not quite an acoustic ballad, but it's more stripped back. But I like it. I think it's good, and there's parts on it where I think it sounds like the vocals, especially, sound like Sum 41, which is back when I liked Sum 41, like their kind of earlier stuff. So yeah, I think it's a good kind of mixture of kind of those genres, punk rock and um, pop punk and that kind of thing. But yeah, I definitely feel like for me, Better Days is the strongest track, and then everything else doesn't quite live up to that.
Because looking at it, Better Days, You're No Good to Me Dead, and Dive, which is the first three tracks in the album, were all released as singles, weren't they?
Yeah, it was Tokyo a single as well.
Tokyo was a single as well, but the first three tracks are all singles.
I think Fake Weed's all right. It doesn't. I think the thing is, there's not a ton of variation on here.
No.
It's just like they all do kind of the same thing for the most part, which is fine because it's only about half an hour long, so it's not. It doesn't necessarily need to be that varied. It's just kind of a quite a fun, rollicking punk rock album.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those maybe Better Days, You're No Good to Me Dead, Are You Love Song 69 I think is actually pretty good. I like the opening riff on Are You Listening? I think that's really cool. Tokyo is really good, and I think it just loses its way a little bit towards the end, maybe not quite as strong.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you. You know, as I said earlier on, in that interview, the lead singer Vinnie Coruna kind of said that, you know, it's although this album might feel as if it's referencing things that have happened in 2020, it's, you know, it was written pre-lockdown, but to me it felt quite deep.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of I've written here kind of angsty lyrics, and I've written that's quite typical of the genre. So if yeah, I don't know how deep it is. I don't think I've really dived into the lyrics that hard, as it just kind of felt like these are the kind of lyrics you expect on this kind of music, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Which is fine with me. Like, I think on Are You Listening in particular, there's the line, "This is the second act. Don't ever turn your back on the ones who walked you towards the sun. You can't face it alone." Which I think is nice. And then later on that song, there's a lyric, "I need you and I hate it," which is very like,
oh, that's like
you, like kind of thing. It's very punk rock.
I think there's quite a few bits like that though, like, you know, like just wee snippets, kind of optimism. Like you mentioned earthquake weather there earlier on. Like one of the lyrics that I've kind of picked out from there is, you have your family, you have your friends, and the last song on the album, which I believe is The Morning, which is again quite angsty as well. I can't quite remember what the lyrics are, but it's like, you know, if I'm here in the morning, like, I can't remember what it is, but I just remember thinking it was quite angsty. But by the same token, there is a lyric in there that says, like, the only thing that needs to change is that we all change for the better. So there is a wee bit of kind of optimism there, I think, to be honest. It's not all kind of doom and gloom.
Yeah, there's a bit on Tokyo I like, which is and there I was where maybe say that again. And there I was where you. Why can't I read this? And there I was where you took your bow. Then I hear your voice and I hit the fucking ground. Like, I think that's quite cool as well. There's like, and that I think I've written here. If you brighten it up a little, put some fucking trumpets on it, and then you've got a Less Than Jake song. It's like, so there's that too.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I think through all of that, I think what I'm trying to say is I do like this album. I think it's good. I don't think it's amazing. It's not going to blow anybody's mind, but it's like a good sort of punk rock album, and it feels like a kind of throwback album as well, a bit, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. I've mentioned, well, we've likened it to all those bands already, so yeah, it definitely has a kind of a nostalgia to it.
Yeah. So I think if I was sticking to the absolute letter of like the rating system, I would be saying it's a 6, like for fans of the genre. But actually, I kind of feel I kind of quite like this a little bit more. So I think I'd give it a 7 because I do quite like it.
Well, I've given it a 7 or an 8, is what
Yeah.
I've said.
And it's an easy album to listen to. It's half an hour long, so I might, probably throw this on a few more times and have a bit more fun with it as well.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm going to be listening to Better Days a lot because
That's a banger of a tune.
that's still, yeah, it's an absolute banger. It's still my favorite song on the album. Absolutely. Okay, so that was Dive by I Am The Avalanche. Okay. All right. It just leaves me to do
Your spiel?
the spiel. So I managed to condense the intro down to a considerably shorter runtime.
All right.
It goes a little something like this. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Is that it?
That's it. No, I'm kidding. I've actually got like 10 minutes of shit to get through here. So, thanks again for listening. We hope you've enjoyed the episode. As always, please do take the time to check out the music we've talked about on the episode. We'd love to know your thoughts on what we've covered. I'm sure the bands and artists would love to hear from you too. And if you really like some of what we've covered, then do consider buying their shit, because whether that's an album or a t-shirt or whatever, that's the best way to support the bands directly. And a lot of these bands are going to be struggling right now with a lack of live music. If you want to support the show, then don't forget to subscribe to the Scratchcast on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember to leave us a nice review, as it helps promote our humble show. If you're feeling generous, you can also buy Grant or myself a coffee at buymeacoffee.com if you want to help support the show and our crippling caffeine addictions. I'll leave the link in the description. You can also leave suggestions on how you think we can improve or what you think we should cover in the future. If you'd like to be featured on Submission Corner, then please send your submissions for consideration to theheadscratcheroutlook.com, or as I mentioned earlier, just message us on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. If you can't wait a full month for the next episode, then head over to theheadscratcher.com, where we continue to post pop culture reviews and recommendations, and you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast, episodes of The Itch, all our monthly alternative music playlists. November's playlist is out now. Our November positivity playlist, or hashtag Where Is My Mind playlist, will be out by the time this episode goes live. And you can also prepare yourself for an unusual Christmas by listening to our alternative Christmas playlist. Some of my choice cuts from that playlist are Sad Christmas Clown by Polka Dot Cadaver, Santa Claus Goes Straight to the Ghetto by Nate Dogg and Snoop Dogg, and A Christmas Duel by The Hives and Cyndi Lauper. And since the original is currently courting controversy, you can give Fairy Tale of Stornoway by Pete and Diesel a wee listen as well. Finally, I promise this is nearly the end. You can visit us on Facebook and Instagram at The Head Scratcher, on Twitter at ScratcherHead, and on YouTube, where you'll find all the podcast episodes split down into individual reviews. They're also on Facebook Watch, and our top 20 of all time and Hall of Fame videos are also on IGTV. Please like, follow, and subscribe for updates. So if you made it this far, thanks once again for listening. And as always, please tell your friends, your colleagues, your parents, and your pets. We'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.
Cheery bye.
It's not finished. It's finished.